Triangulation is a term that we use often in education, but I think it bears repositioning and review. It really is the process of collecting evidence from multiple sources over time. And those sources are products and observations of learners in process and conversations to better comprehend thinking and understanding. It is necessary in order for our findings, in order for our conclusions and our judgments to be valid. For example, I think about a curricular outcome, a curricular competency in the BC curriculum in science, where it states that students need to demonstrate a sustained intellectual curiosity about a scientific topic or problem. Well, there is no way to iterate that on a test. The evidence that a student is able to do this can't be collected on paper or a product. And so validly, this requires that a teacher observe the students and talk to the students in order to learn about their sustained curiosity. Secondly, triangulation is necessary in order for those findings, for conclusions and judgments to be reliable. And by that, I mean repeatable over time so that they can be depended on to be accurate. In other words, as I'm looking across an entire triangulated body of evidence, what patterns and trends am I noticing? What through lines might be illuminated to me? As I think about triangulation and its huge promise for alignment in a system, I'd like to turn to research. So for 11 years, I was engaged in research that has since been published in a peer-reviewed journal in the UK, the Curriculum Journal. And the title is Systems Leaders Using Assessment for Learning, Developing Theory from Practice. And so what we did is we followed 8 leaders in successful systems. And we found that those leaders used the constructs of quality assessment practices to bring alignment and to bring coherence to their system. And in particular, one of the findings that was unveiled is that these leaders moved from just simply quantitative and numbers to triangulated evidence. And that they took this stance from the desk of the student all the way to the table of the trustee. Because that triangulation is a powerful notion of alignment that allows the entire system to benefit from this research-based practice that, quite frankly, is too often simply relegated to the classroom. And so when I think about the framework for enhancing student learning, the strategic planning for student success, when I think about the annual cycle of continuous improvement and the idea of reviewing results and also of scanning multiple sources of evidence, they both speak to broadening the sources of data and evidence, to move beyond the quantitative and in order to ensure validity and reliability. And triangulation can deliver on that promise and also can deliver on the hope to get it better. Alignment and coherence across the system in relation to triangulation, it provides a pedagogical pathway to equity, requiring all students to demonstrate their learning in the same way at the same time does not contribute to equitable learning spaces. Centering one source of evidence, for example, products, can result in disadvantaging and privileging some students and actively disadvantaging others. Additionally, I would say that as I've sat in circle with elders, I can tell you that they have never asked me to produce my thinking on paper. They listen to me, they watch me, and then they pause in order to determine what is the very best next thing to say to me or the just right next thing to engage me. And these elders recognize triangulation and the way that it's rooted in their ways of being in this world. Triangulation is a researched approach. It is embedded in community application. It is a route to validity, to reliability, and to equity. It is a way through which leaders can bring alignment and coherence to a system. And most importantly for me, it brings hope because success and struggle can be found and iterated in multiple ways. However, that means for us as leaders that we have to unhinge ourselves from the certainty that the evidence that is to be valued can be, for example, placed in a cell on a spreadsheet or found somewhere on my desktop. That for me is worth the stretching, it's worth the struggle, it's worth the undoing, and it's certainly worth the relearning.